an alcoholic. Thank you, Ava.
Hold on, I'm having a little issue.
If you're new and you've recently dropped acid, welcome to AA. That'll wake you up.
Hold on for me a second. Hold on.
I just said, if you're new and you've recently dropped acid, that probably really sounded like a very specific color. Thank you very much. You got it, Ben? Good morning, everybody. My name's Scott Redmond, and I'm an alcoholic. And the last time I did this with this group was a couple of weeks after 9/11, and I was scheduled to do a workshop, and I figured after 9/11 that you wouldn't want me to come, that it was just kind of probably too hard, and I called, and I was told, no, now we really need you to come.
Hold on. All righty. How's that?
I was born a poor Jewish boy in the Bronx in 1951. No? Go?
It's not exactly anything.
You go? Is that all right? We good? Huh?
That's the mic.
That's the mic. Two Jews and a machine. Really, sounds like a bad sitcom. Is that all right? Thank you, sweetie.
Okay, well, do a test.
Hi, it's
How's
me
that?
again. So the last time I was going to come and do a workshop, it was right after 9/11, and I didn't think that it would be a good idea to come, and I was told that it would be. And I came, and it was one of the most extraordinary experiences I've ever had. One of the very simple, remarkable events of that weekend for me was I got a new sponsee, and I've been working with him ever since. And I've watched him pick up this design for living. I've seen him pursue his dreams, and I've seen him get involved in this design for living. And he came to me at that point, not to me, he came to with a willingness to do the work in Alcoholics Anonymous. And with the same willingness that I came to it. If you're new, I want to welcome you to AA. If you've been around for a while, I have a hope for you in the little time we have together today. And that is, if you are suffering in sobriety, if you're suffering from some behavior that you can't stop doing, from some problem that continues to plague you, for something you crave, from something you'd like to either see go on forever or something that you'd like to see stop immediately, I hope that you get some traction with it. I hope that maybe you pick up a tool to maybe disrupt that. The Buddhists say that they call suffering dukkha, and they say there's three sources of dukkha. There's wanting things to continue forever, to be eternal. There's wanting things to stop immediately, and there's mental and physical craving. And the literal translation of dukkha is a wheel that's been placed on a cart improperly, so that every time the wheel goes around, it just wobbles a little bit. And of course, I know at times I've turned a personality flaw into a lifestyle that you can you can certainly get used to it. Man, can you get used to a lot, so I've had a lot of problems in sobriety. No, really. And I know that there are people who haven't, and I'm really very happy for them. And I'm really quite serious. I really am happy for them. And I know people who say they really haven't had any big problems. I've really had some problems. And I went up to 320 pounds in sobriety, and I've had an eating disorder, and I've had terrible debt. I went over $100,000 in debt, and severe health problems, severe problems with some very adventurous children. My children are very adventurous. My oldest son, instead of going to undergrad school, graduated high school and went to Chiapas, Mexico, and worked with the Zapatista revolutionaries for a while. With the Jewish battalion of the Zapatista. And the Mexican military is depicted as such a loving, caring group of people. I knew they'd take care of my kid. And it's like a bad Oliver Stone film over and over again. Big problems in my marriage. And this is 22 years in. I haven't had a drink since April 22nd, 1985. There was a guy in my area when I was newly sober. Somebody was giving him a hard time, time. What's the big deal with time, And he said, if you don't think time's a big deal, why don't you get some? Well, I got some, and the result is, and this is just my experience. It's not. I'm telling my story. I'm not bragging. It's my story. Is in 22 years, I haven't spent any appreciable amount of time wandering away from AA and doing something else. I just haven't. That's just my story. So I have 22 years of consistent practice, of consistent spiritual practice. And what it's done is, I feel a tremendous power. I feel a tremendous strength. And I didn't, there's a big difference between submission and surrender. Submission is you kick my ass and I say, okay, enough. And then, I'm going to be back later and run you over with my big brother. My big brother will run you over. Okay. Surrender is, I'm done, Pop. I'm absolutely done. I have absolutely no plan to take place of the plan that just got my ass kicked. I have absolutely no idea of what to do. Now, I have seen surrender turn into submission in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I've seen submission turn into surrender. I don't know that I came here particularly surrendered. I had certainly surrendered to alcohol. I wish that was enough. I wish a spiritual experience was enough. But unless a spiritual experience takes place in the midst of a spiritual community that's going to reignite it and reinvigorate it, it's really going to be, at the end of the day, it's not going to be that meaningful. It's going to be me hoping that I can hold on to this thing that once really allowed my life to be illuminated by a radiance, the source of which was beyond my comprehension. So, and if it wasn't true, I would have very happily had that spiritual experience and went on with the business of life, and I wouldn't have gotten the big prize here, free work. The big prize. You get to do hours and hours of free work for the rest of your life. No, really. And how many times, if you've been around here any amount of time, how many times have we heard people get to the podiums of Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and talk about the fact that they used to have no time in their life and now they simply don't know what to do with the resources that have become available to them because they've stopped squandering the hours that could have been put to better use. I used to have a really awful idea, and my idea was that I could have a successful life separated from you. Oh. Okay. Good. Nice. Okay. And I've had that idea in sobriety, that I could somehow do Alcoholics Anonymous a little better than you and have a successful life, separating myself from the rest of the people in AA by being what I like to call over-sober. And when you're over-sober, it's tough. It's tough duty because you just do it a little better. My inventory process is just a little more goodish than yours, and you're a spiritual retard, but I'd like to help you. It's a terrible, terrible vantage point to try to navigate through a successful life. And many, many times I've had the good luck and the grace to have people come to me later on in their sobriety and say, you know what, I don't know what to do. I'm going crazy. I'm doing the same thing over and over again. This thing is turning to ashes in my mouth. I can't even get it out. This has turned into this flat, gray thing. I wish I was a year sober again, because they seem to be really having a great time and to be very excited, And I feel, like eating my gun, and I'm not having a good time at all. And I understand that, and I also know that if I take a sober, and in this context, a balanced look at the things that I continue to suffer from, and, my suffering is basically stuff that doesn't present as a real piece of business. My alcoholism has been a real piece of business for 22 years. In the past, before that, my alcoholism would slip below the horizon. It would stop presenting itself as a real piece of business, and I would act without reason, without sense, and without explanation. It was like just watching a bad movie of myself over and over again. And it didn't, and isn't that an amazing thing? This most intimate experience, when things are perplexing, or they're fantastic, or they're horrible, that in between breaths, in the middle of the night, I have this extraordinarily intimate experience of drinking and either being soothed or agitated, and drinking, and not even being in control, of having little or no control, or having no governor on it once I begin, of having this bizarre mental twist and physical allergy that puts me into a loop that creates a spiritual agony that I have absolutely no tools to deal with. And it's so intimate and so personal that there's not one thing in this world that can intervene in that process. There's not one thing, I should say, of this world that can intervene in this process. And Alcoholics Anonymous said to me the most bizarre and outlandish thing anyone, in 18 years of psychotherapy, no therapist could, it didn't matter if they said they could do it or not, they couldn't. A wife who I adored, children who loved me and whom I loved, a very successful and exciting career. Nothing could impinge on the intimacy of that. And you told me that you would deliver me to an intimacy, a relationship with a power greater than myself, that I would be given a fellowship, not friendship. I just can't. I'm not even interested in friendship anymore. It's a pain in the ass, and it's so rife with attachment and longing and scheduling and just. Fellowship, how could I possibly be in a room that says fellowship to me more than this? So many people here who I adore and who I've known for years, and we have these relationships that we move in and out of with unbelievable grace and ease. People who I adore and have, again, known for a long time and don't spend that much time with, and it's just not an issue. We don't have to reinvent ourselves every time we get together. We don't have to, say, do I still like you? Do you still like me? What's going on? Do we still like him? Do they still like us? No, and if you're drinking, it's not going to be a big mystery. There's not a big mystery there. It takes almost no time at all to get sick. I've had experiences where I've known people sober and they've had a drink, and I've seen them 72 hours later, and I haven't even recognized them. The transformation is so remarkable. The power of this thing is so extraordinary. In no time at all, they're ravaged by thought. And it's terrifying. So, what do I do? What do I do when I'm continuing to suffer? The not drinking part's a moose. If it wasn't for the not drinking part, we'd be a much bigger organization. I guarantee it. What is this goddamn not drinking thing? And because AA has become part of dominant culture, and because 12-step programs have become part of dominant culture, there's a de-emphasis in a lot of places in AA on the thing that makes it possible for us to function, which is identification. Everything is everything, and it's not. In addition to the identification, which has sort of gotten really kind of watered down by 12-step programs becoming part of it. Where am I?
You're fine.
Good. Thank you.
Making noise.
Okay.
Trying to undo the noise.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's good. It's good.
Go ahead.
Okay. In addition to that, there's sometimes I've seen a de-emphasis on the not drinking thing. I used to be a member of a group that I'm no longer a member of, and one of the reasons that I left the group is there was this nutty idea that you could do anything you want in sobriety as long as you were willing to pay the price. And it's a crazy idea. The craziest, I think, dimension of that idea is, how do you know you're going to be able to pay the price? I mean, the big book of AA, virtually the entire book is devised to drive home the idea that you'll have absolutely no idea what you're going to do if you drink. That's why I love when newcomers say, well, if I drink, you'll what? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? My second favorite is when a new guy says, I was with people smoking crack last night, and I felt really comfortable. I don't know what it is. We forget that it's illegal. I had a grand sponsor who used to say that when Jonah got out of the belly of the whale, he didn't go back in to get his hat, which I really like that a lot. I have friends this week who are having a very difficult time. They're in mourning for somebody who was taken from them, and I'm some men in my life who have going through some severe illness and some really difficult stuff. And I don't see God's hand in any of it. I don't see God's deliberate hand in one whit of it. My God expects me to do my job in Alcoholics Anonymous if I have cancer or if I don't have cancer. My God expects me to do my job in Alcoholics Anonymous if my sons are alive and prospering or if they get annihilated. My God expects me to do my job in Alcoholics Anonymous if my wife and I have been married for 32 years and we're having a great time together. Whether or not we're married or not, my God expects me to do my job in Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't have a God that's giving out divorces. It's like God is some deranged game show host, Let's key your car. It's boils for you. You're due for a rash. And there's a reason. You'll figure it out. You'll figure the rash out. There's a reason. Believe me. You'll find out. If I saw the deliberate hand of God in the difficulties and suffering of people, I don't know that I'd be really interested in sticking around. To me, it's preposterously egotistical to think that I've got God keeping Saturn on its axis and stubbing my toe. I can't buy it. I do believe that there's a greater good. My sponsor, who passed away some years ago, talked a lot about everything being perfect just the way it is. And a lot of people misunderstood that and would get very angry about it and say, oh, so my son got killed, or we've had this horrible thing happen, and that's exactly the way it's supposed to be. And he would remind them that what he wrote was, everything is perfect in God's universe, not in man's universe. There are some very troubled and very sick individuals. Our book talks about them being spiritually sick. And our book also, a lot of people find it very helpful to pray for other people, and I'm not indicting that at all. I forgot to give you my disclaimer. Don't take anything I'm saying as anything you should be doing, please. I don't have no idea what you should be doing in AA. I'm going to tell you what I've been doing, and it's working magnificently for me, but I don't know if any of it'll be worth, useful to you. So, if your sponsor says something completely different to what I'm saying, please stick with your sponsor, because I'm going home on Tuesday, and I live in Los Angeles, so. Years ago, my older son, who's 12, was 12 at the time. He's 28 now, and he got into a political discussion with my father-in-law, which was a big mistake. And my father-in-law is a right-wing and very much so, and I'm not indicting people who are of the right, but really I'm not indicting them at all. My son wasn't, and up into and including Chiapas, has remained kind of not right-wing. And at 12, he was pretty much deranged at 12. It was off the deep end at 12. And he got into a conversation with my father-in-law. And unfortunately for my father-in-law, my son's been smarter than him his entire life. He's a brilliant kid. And he just made mincemeat out of my father-in-law in this discussion. And then my father-in-law did what bullies do. He lied. He lied in order to be right. And he said to my son, he presented my son with an argument that my son couldn't come back at. He said, you know what, I used to think what you think, and I don't anymore, and you won't either. And I saw him, he just put a pin in my kid. I saw the air go out of him. And I acted like a gentleman. I waited till my father-in-law left, and I got my kids into a room, and I sat down with them. They were 12 and 9, and I looked at my boys, and I said, you know what, whoa. Your grandpa just lied to you. It's not true. What he just said to you is not true. I believe what you believed when I was your age, and I believe it more now. And now that I'm a sober, responsible man, I can actually write a check and give money to the causes that I believe in now. And what started, that wasn't the first time that it happened, but I started walking a road with my kids that had been presented to me in Alcoholics Anonymous. What Alcoholics Anonymous had done for me was give me sensible, consistent, and flexible limits. Sensible, consistent, and flexible limits. And if people had played God with me and had bullied me and smacked me around, I never would have been able to do that. I never would have been able to accept that re-civilizing process and apply it to my life and start achieving the things that I wanted to achieve and get involved in this design for living and start living my dreams, which I have been living for 22 years now. One of the things that I've had to do is scrub my dream. And what I mean by that is, well, I have a dream. What's your dream? Well, I'd like to get even. And I would like to have your woman and some other stuff. And if my dream is scrubbed, if it's clean, if it's free of fear, resentment, and sexual misconduct, then it's more than a dream, really. It's a practical goal. It's an interesting thing for me to move toward. The phrase you should be careful what you pray for, I just don't subscribe to at all. If I'm praying right, I never have to be careful of what I'm praying for. If I'm right-minded. So, what did I want to do? Well, I wanted to have a romantic relationship with my wife. I wanted to write well. I wanted to be a good father. I wanted to be respected by my peers. I'd like to be, have a few bucks, pay bills and support my children with the endeavors they were pursuing. These are all really reasonable things, And you said to me basically, okay, you can do that. Now let me ask you a question. Do you have to suffer until you get that? And I said, yeah, I do. If I'm not going to suffer, who is? And if someone's not suffering and someone's not focusing on this, how is it ever going to manifest itself? How is that possibly going to happen? You know, I've sponsored guys recently in the last year or so who, you know, doing service, showing up, breaking meetings down, setting meetings up, and not getting work, not getting a job, not getting the basic thing that it seems like you ought to get with this, you know, unless God is going to smote your ass, you know, if you're going to get smoted. I love that word. Why is this not happening to me? Why is there not a cause and effect? If I've got a relationship with God, don't you think this should be part of the relationship? And years ago, when alcoholics were being treated, psychiatrists did something called treating the symptom. What they would do is stop you from drinking. And they had a lot of bizarre ways of stopping you from drinking. And psychiatry in general treated the symptom. If you were doing something aberrant or something bizarre, they would stop. And then Freud came along with something called the unconscious. He discovered the unconscious, and he said, you know what? You're on the wrong track. If you don't treat the deeper underlying causes and conditions, they'll never stop in a reasonable way and live a happy life. So if you treat the deeper underlying causes and conditions, the motivations, the symptom will stop. Then Alcoholics Anonymous comes along because the alcoholics continue to die, and Harry Tiebout, one of the great founding fathers, really, in a lot of ways. He was Bill's shrink and added. If you've never read his papers, I urge you to read them. Just hit the web and find him. Harry Tiebout, I think it's T-I-E or T-E-I? T-E-I. B-O-T. And they're remarkable. They're absolutely remarkable. And what Tiebout basically said to the medical profession was, I agree with Freud, I agree with this modality of therapy, and you better not do it with alcoholics. You better continue to treat the symptom with alcoholics. If you don't stop drinking, you're going to die. That I agree with it in general, for the general population, but if we don't continue to treat the symptom with alcoholics, you're never going to live, you're going to have a very well-adjusted corpse. They're never going to stick around long enough to get to the point where they're going to get to the deeper underlying causes and conditions. This was a very revolutionary approach, and of course gave birth to a lot of, a big part of the recovery industry. So, in facing these things that have continued to be a problem for me in sobriety, it's an interesting thing. I have been very unsuccessful at treating the symptom with the things that I've continued to be to suffer from. I've been very successful at it with alcoholism. I've surrendered to alcohol. Tiebout actually early on said that Alcoholics Anonymous was only for surrender to alcoholism. In one of his papers he says this. And then we swing full 180, and then there's people today who say that Alcoholics Anonymous should service and solve every problem that we have. I don't subscribe to either point of view, you know. I think that there's a gray area. And for me, the interesting thing is the only time that becomes dangerous is if I get involved in any of the courses of action that I've been led to. I've been led to other 12-step programs. I've been led to different therapies. I've been led to all sorts of other things, different spiritual teachers. I've never done one of them instead of AA. I've done every single one of them because of AA. None of them have caused me to refute AA. As a matter of fact, each one of them have built my faith in Alcoholics Anonymous, have drawn me closer to Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, there's nothing like having all sorts of different courses of action to help suffering people, as opposed to saying, well, you're just shit out of luck on this one. I just don't know what you're going to do about this, you know. But Zygazint and let me know how it works out. So I had this eating disorder, and is really a problem for me, and I would write inventory about it. And I had this debting problem, and it was unbearable to me that I would be, 10, 15 years sober and still be irresponsible and still be borrowing money from people. And I'm resentful at Scott for borrowing money. It affects my self-esteem, pocketbook, ambition, personal relations, and sex. What are the defects in me that if God were to remove the resentment would be gone? Blue skies, magic wand, God comes down and touches me on the head. What is it in me that if God would remove the resentment would be gone? Because I don't just hate stuff. I re-experience the hatred. I water it like a little flower in the morning. I want to make sure that it's alive and robust and growing. The worst thing is when I forget to hate something, and the guy says, hi, and I go, hi. Oh, I hate him. Why did I do that? Why did I do that? I'm going to have to redouble my snubbing just to get back to where I was. I hate so that when my head hits the pillow, it becomes a rotisserie. I go mad. It eats my brain and my heart, and it turns my life black. I re-experience this thing so that there's no room for me in my own life. So what am I going to do? Well, it says in the description of 6 and 7 in our book that I go over the first 5 propositions in the book, and I ask myself, where am I trying to make mortar without sand? Have I done these first 5 propositions thoroughly? Boy, what an idea. This thing of going over and over these things over and over again and them flattening out and just feeling like I'm just talking the same thing, and I don't see it expanding. I don't see where it's getting any fatter. And, if I had one book that I could give to my sons, it would be the gateway to all the other books. And I believe that that's what Alcoholics Anonymous is. I believe that the big book of AA is the gateway to all the other books. It says in step 11, go out and find it. Thank God it doesn't enumerate different spiritual practices and stuff like that. That would have been really fun. It would have been awful, but they say there's, incredible, priests, rabbis, practitioners, all sorts of stuff. And it says, try not to go there with a jaundiced eye. Try to go there with an open mind. See what they have to offer. One thing I think that's glaringly apparent to all of us at this point in our lives, in time, you can use any sentence from the big book of AA, from the Torah, the Koran, or the Bible to prove any point you want to prove ever. If you can take the Jesus Christ message and turn it into a weapon of hate, you can pretty much do anything. It's pretty remarkable. It's talk about heading them off at the pass. It's a pretty extraordinary thing. And yet, some of these messages of love and acceptance have been so abused and so misused that even bringing them up causes people's stomachs to boil. It's remarkable, I avoid using them most of the time. And when I'm talking in public and stuff like that, except at an AA function, I avoid using the word God. I'm just not willing to spend a lot of time having to do an end run around it. We're at the end of the day, we're talking about the same thing. When I'm talking to my kids' commie friends, we are talking about the same thing. We're talking about making community. We're talking about the connective tissue, that gets made in Alcoholics Anonymous and in community when you're making community. Because I no longer believe that I can have a successful life separated. And it's particularly challenging if you're dealing with xenophobia or homophobia or racism or anti-Semitism or any of these other miserable societal diseases. It's an extra little log on the fire there. One of the things that that has been so productive for me, when I didn't come from an alcoholic home. My family didn't need alcoholism at all. Alcoholism would be a distraction from their psychosis, which they couldn't fit in. But when I've been working with guys who come from alcoholic homes, it's a wonderful thing to throw that on the table and take a real open and honest look at it and say, you know what, you have a message that I don't have. I don't have that message of recovering despite the fact that I grew up in an alcoholic home. Because people who grew up in alcoholic homes have a little something extra on the table. You know, they have this notion that the alcoholic is going to get over on them. That they're going to cheat them. They're going to get them. Somehow it's just not going to work out. They're going to be lied to, and they're going to be suckered and made a fool of somehow. There's all sorts of things that go into growing up in an alcoholic home that I didn't have to go through. And is that an excuse for not sponsoring people? No. And it's an enhancement. It's actually, if you can grow up in an alcoholic home and do successful 12-step work and successfully navigate your way through a sponsorial relationship without it detonating because it looks like they're going to cheat you or get over on you. You know, I have not seen that happen that successfully unless it's been my experience that the more it's talked about and thrown on the table, and if, you know, for me, no 10-step, no 12-step. If I don't continue to take inventory about the people who I'm working with and about the people who are working with me, I won't do it anymore. Because newcomers act just like themselves. They act, you know, how are you? The newcomer asks me once in a while, and I say, you know, my wife just burst into flame and my kids are... And the guy goes, oh, well, good. You know, my girlfriend's transmission's out, and do you know a guy? I sponsor a wonderful guy. When we started working together, he was letting me know how low maintenance he was going to be, which I always, man, I tell you, that's always in his mind. That he got, you know, he understood what sponsorship was about, and, you know, he said, you know, I know you're not a marriage counselor, you're not an investment counselor, you're not a, you know, a psychiatrist. And I said, so we're not going to be talking about any of that stuff? He said, no. I said, what in the hell are we going to talk about? Politics and art? What the hell is left? I mean, and it's a difficult thing. People get concerned about dumping. And my definition of dumping is expressing a problem without seeking a solution. And that is dumping. You know, when guys share stuff with me, I ask them, and when they're done, I ask them if they would, sometimes I ask them if they would like any feedback on it. And many times they go, no, not really. No, but thanks for offering. And sometimes they do. But sometimes guys just want to talk, you know, and I'll listen for a while, and then I won't. Because after a while, I start getting sick. You know, it's a difficult thing for me. So I've had to go back to the first 5 propositions in the book, and I've had to take a look at them and say, where am I trying to make mortar without sand? This thing that I'm suffering from in sobriety, what is it that I'm doing? Where's the gap? What is it with this money thing? Is it step 1? Am I not really admitting that I'm powerless over money? Everybody, just let's take a moment of quiet just right now. And if you would, if there is a thing in your life right now that you would like to see change, if there's a thing in your life that is blocking you, and there might not be. There very well might not be, and there very well might be. If you can see that for a second. And if you can just say, Father, Mother, God, however you address your higher power, please help. Please help me. Help me draw closer to you. Help me to know your love and your comfort. Help me to accept your help so that I can use this to help another human being. Help me to pass this on. This is too hard for me. I don't want to live like this anymore. Help me move closer to you. Where is it? When I drew close to him, he revealed himself to me. God could and would if he was sought. Let's put it in the light. Nothing can stand up to the light. The light annihilates it all. What can I do? Okay. And I say it, is it step one? Am I not really admitting I'm powerless over this thing? That my life is unmanageable around this thing. I am powerless over money. My life is unmanageable around money. I know that you will restore me to sanity around money. I turn my will and my life over to you around money. Father, I offer myself to thee to build with me, to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of money. Turn my attention to what you would have me be, so that I can help others avert death and misery, so that I can help the new man or the new woman, and I can make a demonstration and show them that there's a way out of this. There's a way out of this horrible sexual behavior, and I say horrible because I feel horrible. Not because Scott Redmond thinks it's horrible, because it makes me feel horrible. Only every time I do it. But are you free tonight? Or does it have to do with my body? Or does it have to do with the way I'm... I've heard sometimes that all the problems in sobriety are either relationship or money. And you know what? It would be nice if it was that simple. My life would be a lot easier, if it was that simple. And believe me, my life is plenty easy. Plenty easy, I was over $100,000 in debt. I'm $8,000 in debt. It works. It really does. I'm 120 pounds down from my top weight. I have a very loving, exciting relationship with my wife. And 2 years ago, you wouldn't be hearing this list. It would be a very different list. And in the middle of May, I was diagnosed with liver cancer. And at the end of May, they operated on me and found out that I didn't have one tumor, that I had 10 tumors. And I'm good. Not happy about it, but I'm good. And my son came to me in the hospital after we got this really just dark news. And he said, Pop, we really get that you're okay. We get it. We've known you a long time. And, the AA Army is in the hospital, and I always feel swept away by that song. You know what I mean? I always want to get twirled when I hear that. Don't you do that? He said, I get that you're all right. And I'm not. I'm not okay. So, get it together. And we need to see that you're gonna fight this thing. So I got to sit and have this remarkable talk with my son. I was loaded on heroin the night my father died. I couldn't even go into the room and touch him on the cheek and give him a kiss. The ice around my heart had become so thick that I couldn't even express my love for this adorable man, And I had too much evidence against him, too. Boy, what a hell of a defect that is, evidence gathering. Man, that is a bitch, man. It's almost as bad as mind reading, but that's still the worst. Oh, I'll say it. My wife once said to me, I've shared this many times, but I just love to say it. My wife once said to me, because I had finished her last 15 sentences for her, and she said, honey, let me take a shot at a whole sentence, and if I get into trouble, I'll make a signal and you can join in. She said, "You're not a mind reader, you're barely a mind user." Hurt my feelings. Get your pencils out, ladies. Get that down. The Bhagavad Gita, which is arguably the holiest Hindu book, takes place on a battlefield, and these two houses are about to battle, and members of the same family are about to slaughter one another. And in the middle of the battle, God Krishna approaches a man named Arjun, who is, and they have this discussion. Time freezes for a moment in the middle, right as this battle is about to take place, and he then talks. I don't think Krishna knew it at the time, but the message of the chapter to the family afterward. In the chapter to the family afterward, there's a beautiful thing written about what newly sober alcoholics are apt to do. And they're apt to do two things. They're apt to do many, many things, but two things we see them do a lot is try to make up for the past as quickly as they can because of the horrible feelings of shame and guilt, make up, get back with their possessions, get back the money, break even, get back there. And then the other thing that they tend to do is become spiritual Goliaths, and they look at the spiritual, malcontents around them and look down on everybody, even though their family has put up with this unending, parade of crap all these years, and they look at them and tisk at them and stuff like that. And it says this, it makes this beautiful statement. It says, we're sure that God wants us to have our head in the clouds and our feet firmly planted on the ground. And that's basically what Krishna says to Arjun. He says this beautiful thing. He says, we should have our head in the our head in the battle and our heart at the lotus feet of the Lord. And that's what I got to share with my son that morning, that I assured him that because I was okay dying, it didn't mean that I wasn't going to try to live. That this was going to help me navigate my way through a very difficult, challenging landscape of doctors and different modalities of treatment and all sorts of things. Very challenging to work your way through the medical community and insurance companies. And that I was going to be able to do this like a gentleman, like a grown-up. I was going to be the guy, and I know this from personal experience, that people actually like to talk to, where they don't hear my voice and go, and that's not because of people-pleasing. That's from overcoming a fear of confrontation and telling people what I need without telling them what to do. To not repress, and climb up into a clock tower with a high-powered rifle. To not, not retaliate and scream and yell and indict you, but to tell you how I feel and without telling you what to do. And I know it works because I've done it. I'm going to say hundreds, and I think I'm being conservative in that. Hundreds and hundreds of times with the men I've sponsored. Guiding them into being able to stand up for themselves and give no crap and take no crap. What a design for living. What a remarkable thing to do, Because every time I take some, I wind up giving a whole lot, and every time I give some, I wind up accepting quite a bit. And it was a remarkable experience and interchange that I had with my son that morning. And then a couple of months later, I got even darker news about my health, and now I'm in. I found myself in a what if. I've always suspected somehow that my pain was kind of cheap. I've never had a member of my family brutally murdered. I've never had to deal with that agony. I've never had to deal with rape. I've never had to deal with being in a concentration camp. I don't live in Darfur. I've never had to deal with some of the medieval bestiality that erupts in this world, you know. And so I haven't had to deal with that test. And so there's been part of me that's always felt that my pain was kind of cheaply come to, in a sense. And I'm not coming cheap to this one. This is an as if. And how remarkable that I could step back from it and tell you that 22 years in from this practice that I'm good. I'm not telling you I'm not scared. I'm not telling you that the 10 steps in there now. I'm writing another one today. You know, I'm resentful at cancer. I'm resentful at myself for creating misery for my family. Fancy to reel, it has the power to actually kill. If I don't stay current on this stuff, then my serenity will become an idea of something I think I should have, which will become a weapon that I'll use against myself, which is the same thing that will happen to my dreams if I don't utilize the steps to implement them. They will become a weapon I will use against myself because I haven't gotten them. And they will eventually become a weapon I'll use against other people for having them. It's a wonderful life to live that's diminished on an ongoing basis by every success that you guys have. Fabulous way to live. And conversely to that, when I'm living a life that is amplified and enhanced by every success that my brothers and sisters have, it's bottomless, it's endless, it's absolutely glorious. So after this darker piece of information, and feeling really upside down from it, I realized that my son's voice came back to me, and I got back into a conversation with him, and I realized that I was imbalanced. And what I mean by that is I had surrendered to dying, and I was not surrendering to living. And I wasn't surrendering to living with as much industry and commitment and belief and faith. And who am I to not do that? Who am I to say there is no God? Who am I to say that God is going to present in helping me die, and God is not going to present in helping me live? It ain't fair. I would help you with that. I would begrudge Scott Redmond that, because it's something I've always felt very strongly about. I've never been a tough love guy. I don't need anybody treating me like crap. You can't do me like I do me anyway. You don't have, you'd need a full-time staff. I mean, to do me like I do me. So, again, another portal, another way to scrub my dream and see, the Buddhists many Buddhists say that their goal is to stop suffering and to not be afraid to die. It's been my goal for a long time. I'm not going to die from cancer. Cancer doesn't have that kind of power. I found myself a couple of weeks ago saying, I'm sick. I'm not sick. I'm Scott Redmond, and I have a sickness. I am fine. Some bad things happen to me, but I am fine. So I could be moving on, relatively quickly, and I could be around for some years. I'm the source of love and support and comfort for my sons, and I was the source of misery, fear, and a constant reminder of the limits and the meanness of life to them. And and I talk about them a lot because they're such a great demonstration. They're such a great and if you don't have children, they're just the demonstration for me. I really firmly believe this. I don't care if it's your house plant, if it's a pet, a beloved pet, or a beloved relative, or a person. Whatever you find the demonstration in is the big deal for you. I don't put any, importance on whether or not it's children or not. But that's the way that that it's been delivered to me in a lot of ways. Sometimes I've heard in the course of events in Alcoholics Anonymous, I've heard people talk about, well, normies, and I don't know what normies do because, they don't have what we have. Folks, we're a little late to market here. They've been doing this stuff for thousands of years. I mean, real good without us. We're 3 million. There's a billion Christians and there's a billion Buddhists and there's, let's not even go there. So it's nice that we feel good about ourselves and we're happy about Alcoholics Anonymous. But in terms of spiritual rebirth, in terms of living a spiritual life, and the basic principles that we have, which are, admission, submission, amends, charity, honesty, all this stuff, they've been around for a really long time. Really long time. Whatever it is that is blocking you, whatever it is that you have decided is not going to be able to be helped by this process, I want to urge you to become a seeker again. Because if you feel that way, then you've stopped seeking. Or you've certainly stopped seeking in that area. I want to urge you to open up again, to find a new spiritual orientation. My teachers have led me to Eckhart Tolle, to Anthony DeMello, who's a Jesuit priest, to Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist nun, to all of these extraordinary spiritual teachings. And they have... one of my favorite spiritual teachers describes faith in a way that really shook me up. It really turned my world around in a wonderful way. He said that faith is not belief. He used to confuse faith with belief. He's going to play a little semantics here, but it's worth it just for the message. He said, they're not. He said, for him, faith is not belief. He said, I like my beliefs. I like them because I believe in them. So they make me feel good because I like them, I believe in them, and they work for me when they come up. He said, faith is the willingness to expose myself to the truth despite the consequences. Wow, what an extraordinary description of step 2. To step off into thin air. When we look at the newcomer and say, when you want to drink, don't. The hell is that all about? I mean, it's the craziest thing anybody ever said to me. But if you accept your craving to drink, if you stop treating your craving with a drink, every craving has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And if you stop treating your craving to drink with a drink, you'll become available for the removal of the obsession. You will then open the door for us to infer ourselves into this most remarkably intimate moment. And once you let us into that intimate moment, and we're able to give you another voice, some other voice than the automatic voice where the alcoholism goes below the horizon, it stops presenting itself as a real piece of business, and I act without reason, without explanation. If it's food, the food goes below the horizon, and I do the thing I swore I wouldn't do. If it's sex, if it's money, if it's anything, it stops going below the horizon. God can't help me there. And I'm acting without reason, without sense, and without logic. What can I do in those first 5 propositions in the book to keep them above the horizon as a real piece of business? And here's the trick. Here's the glorious wonder of AA, even when I'm not concentrating on it. I am powerless over cancer. My life is unmanageable over cancer. I know that God will restore me to sanity around cancer. I turn my will and my life over to you, and I give you this cancer. I give you this cancer, and that means now, instead of sitting and shuddering and living in fear and apologizing to everybody for upsetting them, I can go out into the world and use healers and use conventional medicine and really have a robust, active, hands-on, and do this the way I've been taught to do it, man. You know. I sat down with my mother and some relatives yesterday, which is, Chekhov, a wonderful playwright, was asked what his ideal of the theater was, what his perfect description of what he'd like the theater to be. And he said, the theater should be like eating dinner with your family. During the course of the meal, all that is said is pass the butter and pass the salt, please, and yet by dessert, your life is destroyed. So I sat down with my mother yesterday, and and we just, I don't have any secrets. I don't have any dark spots. Anything that I'd be ashamed to do in front of my sponsees, I pretty much won't do it. You know. So I hope they feel the same. And so at any rate, I just cannot even begin to tell you what an incredible, how loved I feel today and how loving I feel today. I just can't tell you what a powerful experience this is for me. And one thing I got to ask you, don't turn me into Cancer Boy now. Let me be Scott Redmond. Don't see me across the room and get a sad look on as you walk towards me. Don't do it. I won't walk towards you. Don't make me sick. You know. And as I've said to the guys I sponsor, stop if you think I'm too busy to do my AA work, then I could really get sick. So anyway, let's take a little break now. We'll come back and we'll do Q&A. My name's Sky Redman. I'm an alcoholic. Please join me in the Serenity Prayer. God.
Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Any questions? Anything that I talked about that people would like me to talk more about? Or any questions like, why don't you stop talking? Anything like that? Yeah.
Hi, Mary. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Mary.
You mentioned you attempted against cancer and the misery you caused your family, and that you're currently working on the 10th step for that. And my question is, is that a recurring resentment? And if you're doing a 10th step today, you found out about the cancer in May, and you knew that you caused your family misery, how do we work? We work past that. We try not to bring it to the 10th step again, and constantly have to relive it. Do you find that you relive some of these things often, or is it something that you just tunnel in?
No, I definitely relive some of them often. One of the things that starts happening to you when you talk a lot in AA is sometimes people turn you into an object. So just a few minutes ago, somebody said to me that they used to love to hear me talk, and then they started hearing me talk, and they couldn't stand hearing me talk. And now now I'm not trying to mess with anybody's anonymity, and now they after this morning's talk, they like hearing me talk again. It just makes me feel horrible. It's just and in order to do that, I think you have to turn me into some kind of an object. That I have to be devoid of some kind of feeling, around that. So I'm trying to get my legs underneath me now and not feel, scared, or like I've got to be careful now. But it's hard. It's really hard sometimes. And you know what? It's part of it comes with the territory. If I'm going to forfeit my anonymity by doing this, and believe me, you do forfeit your anonymity, and anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all of these principles, there's a price that has to be paid. I understand that. And it's a price that sometimes I'm more willing to pay than other days. Today I guess it's kind of going through some tough stuff, and maybe I'm not. No matter if I decide I am willing to pay for it, it's a harder price to pay today. When this stuff comes up again and again, I have to go back to the first 5 propositions in the book and say, why is it continuing to come up? If I start making judgments about myself and saying, I shouldn't be feeling this, then I'm doomed to feel it for the rest of my life. I have guys I sponsor who go, I just can't believe I've got to read this again. I'm humiliated by it. Now, I sometimes will ask them, are you getting judged by me? The answer is inevitably no. They're not getting tissed by me. They're not getting, God, if you just get this together, I'd have more free time, because that's really what it's, born of. So my experience is when there's recidivism, when it comes up again and again, and the resentments that you mentioned are not coming up again and again. I haven't had to write about them a bunch of times. Because remember, it says in the promises, I will be able to deal with situations that used to baffle me. So eventually these things, there are things today that happen to me that I would have been writing about in 2 seconds, and they happen to me, and they're just not a big deal anymore. And then there are things that you got me, So I go over the first 5 propositions. If it's cancer, where am I? Is it step 1? Is it step 2? Do I not really think that God is going to help me? Or is it step 3? Have I not really made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God in this area? Is it step 4? Have I not really done all of the inventory work that I need to do? Or is it step 5? It says in step 5 that oftentimes newcomers have kept facts about themselves to themselves, and later they've died because of it. So I go over the first 5 propositions in the book, and the result is my experience of those 5 steps grows richer and thicker and more interesting. I have more to share with a newcomer about my experience with those 5 propositions. But if I'm lambasting myself for having them, I'll get nowhere. And the other thing is if my life becomes about writing and reading, and I forget that this stuff, if it's not used as the direct application to service, then all I'm doing is how many Bill Wilsons can dance on the head of a pin. I mean, all I'm doing is turning this into a self-help program, really. So I hope that's helpful. Good. My pleasure. What if you're so out of touch with yourself, you feel like you don't know anything anymore? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that's causing suffering. If it's causing suffering, then I am in touch with my suffering, and then then there's at least a resentment against myself. I know that sometimes people don't really buy having a resentment against themselves. I buy it. Sometimes I write a 10-step, and there's nobody but me on the 10-step. My ability to hate myself is remarkable, which is interesting because I'm not a suicide guy. I'm a homicide guy. I vastly prefer your death to mine. I always have, and I'm not indicting the suicide people. I'm not knocking the suicide people. It's kind of the flip side of the same coin. So what if you're so out of touch with yourself you feel like you don't even know anything anymore? I would suggest that perhaps there are some pretty profound resentments against yourself for being that way, and maybe that's a way to get a foot in the door, to start prying this thing open. Because what's a 10th step? It's a platform to approach God. That's all it is. It's not some great achievement. It's just another platform that I can approach God in prayer. So I hope that's helpful. Anybody else? Yeah.
Jim.
Hey, Jim.
I need to tell you something first. I'll ask you a question. I've had a real hard time the last 4 years. 4.5 years ago, I got to live the dream I wanted, to marry. I lost my first wife. Kim found out she had pancreatic cancer 5 weeks after we got married, and I lost it 3 months later. It's November 7th. And I lost my belief in God. It's really amazing. I broke down
The question is, the gentleman's gone through some very difficult stuff, and his wife passed away from pancreatic cancer, and he lost his faith in God and has recently gotten it back. And his question is, did I go through a similar thing? And I'm be completely honest with you, I haven't. I hope I'm a long way. I hope I have a lot more opportunities to have my faith tested. You know, at the end of the day, I don't think it's my faith that's getting tested. I think it's my belief. You know, I'm willing to continue to expose myself to the truth despite the consequences. You know, also, I'm not a survivor. I'm somebody who has the illness. That's a very different experience. You know, a very, very different experience. So, the other thing that I think is worth mentioning here is a long time ago I had to deal. You know, on my inventory, I was raised Jewish, and I had to deal with, you know, dealing with a lot of hatred and being shown as a kid going to Hebrew school and being shown films of bodies being bulldozed. And it was a big deal for me my whole life. I had recurring nightmares, and I grew up in a neighborhood in the Bronx where I got my ass kicked on a regular basis, and it was bad, really, really bad. And this idea that there's a reason for suffering, and it'll be, you know, you'll find out eventually, doesn't work for me. It's never worked for me. So what I've had to do was find a way to accept the mystery and be comfortable with that and live happy, joyous, and free with the mystery. Why do I have to know everything? Why does everything have to be my business, you know? It doesn't, and everything doesn't have to be explained anymore. And the way that it happened for me was in a very small way. I made some mistakes, and I had this incredible experience. I stopped drinking. I went to a group, and I stopped drinking. So I made a mistake, and I made the group the reason why I stopped drinking. I've heard it over and over again. I owe my life to this group. And I always think, then you're the creek without a paddle, because your group is one bomb away from being wiped off the face of the earth, and then what the hell are you going to do? There was a story in my old home group about this woman who was told that she could use anything for her higher powers, so she prayed to the tree outside of her house, and she prayed to it every morning. And the tree kept her sober. And one morning she woke up, and a city crew was putting the last branch of the tree into a chipping machine. And went rolling down the street, and she went screaming, running after the truck, screaming, "Oh God, save my tree!" So she had to make the transition in that moment, you know. So accepting the mystery has been incredibly important for me, and it's been, to me, a big part of my. I've had a very successful experience in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm having a very successful experience in AA now, and without accepting the mystery, I don't have that. Then I misidentify groups and different people as the source of the power, instead of which they are, which is on their best day a reflection of it. So I'm so glad that you're experiencing some relief. I'm really, really happy for you. I don't know if that was any help at all, but I'm really happy for you.
Thank you, Scott. My name is Peggy Brown. I'm an alcoholic. I adore you. Scott looks great in bikini bathing. What I hear a lot, through the years, and I hear it from a number of the women that I sponsor, is, I'm sober 15 years. I mean, why is this happening? Why do I feel this way? I mean, I should be, what they're really saying is, I'm sober. I should be perfect. I shouldn't overeat. I shouldn't overdance. I shouldn't oversex. I should. And you know what I say? I do all these things. I mean, I have all these feelings. I'm sober. The difference is I know what I have to do about it. I know where I have to go. And, I mean, it's never going to stop. I mean, the anger, you can get angry. It's what you do about the anger. I can feel the anger. I can feel, I can be homicidal. But as long as I don't go and shoot the person or stab them, I know where to go. I guess what I'm really saying, I do not live life on life's terms. I don't. I live it on God's terms. No question about it. I know that there's a great power there. The Master is directing my life. I just have to stay on point. And because of this incredible program that, for some reason, I guess because I was the best Girl Scout in the neighborhood, I was given this gift of this disease that let me, and it didn't kill me. It brought me here to all of you, and why am I so lucky? Why does God love me so much? But I know that He does, and I know because I'm here and I was given. I know. I'm so happy.
Thanks, Beck. Thanks, Beck. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Frank Cordovano, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Frank.
Everyone, great hearing you today, Scott. I was still unpacking in my apartment yesterday, and I was listening to a CD, and it was a view of a talk that you gave in Brentwood last year, the year before, and I was doing some stuff, and all of a sudden you said something that really got me, and you said, we talk about change and how we have a tough time, and you said, I don't have a tough time with change as long as I'm getting what I want, and it really hit home with me because, I was lucky, and you talked about God putting people in your lives. I was lucky that 6 months ago when I came to a really dark place where my ex-wife moved out to L.A. with my daughter that I was, and it's because, like you said, I got a lot of time in the program. I did something smart, and I went to Peggy. And Peggy taught me how to pray to get that direction, that connection again. And my life has absolutely changed in the last 6 months. I've become another man than I was 6 months ago. And I called her up 2 weeks ago when I was out in L.A. and I was just out there seeing my daughter for my birthday. And I said, Peggy, I just signed a lease on an apartment, a half a block from Julia's apartment. And I said, what's going on? And she started crying and she said, God's making you the man He's always meant you to be, but you tried to kill him. And I love the people that He's putting in my life today. The people in this room that have become my family. I'm glad that I've met you. I'm glad I have your number because I need guys like you out in L.A. I need people to call and say, hey, God, it's so new to me. Because it's going to be total change in my life. My whole reason in life is to be with my daughter. But it's AA first, then family, then work. And you really touched me, and I appreciate it.
Thanks. Questions?
Why did you call this workshop Pursuing Your Dreams?
Because it used to be my excuse for talking about the inventory. So I could have called it sex, but so people would come to the inventory saying, and you busted me on it actually. Somebody saying to Ava, good, we're going to work with dreams. And she said, no, he's just going to talk about the inventory. So it was...
Hi, Bonnie.
And then Dave.
I wrote a question, but I'm pretty sure you're going to get to it. The first question that came up was really, but I'm going to ask it again.
Right.
So, you have a resentment. You've done the 10 steps. You've written it out. You've seen your part. You're praying. You're doing, I'm blah, 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 blah. You won't let it go. I'm fine. And then all of a sudden, a leaf fell from a tree and it slaps me in the face all over, and I'm running around like a lunatic, making everyone, especially my husband, miserable. Just that insanity. Step 2, insanity. I know God can, blah, 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 blah. Writing. What?
For me, again, the doorway is 6 and 7. The doorway is 6 and 7.
Self-justification. Okay. Opposite is humility. Okay, go.
So, I'll take 2 resentments. My brother stopped talking to me when I got sober, and he didn't talk to me for 20 years, and then he died. He didn't talk to his nephews. He had no contact whatsoever. So when he first stopped talking to me, I made amends to him. He wouldn't take my calls. I sent him a letter. apologizing, and he sent me back a letter saying, you don't owe me any apology, but if you live to be 1,000,000 and you're sorry every day of the 1,000,000 years, you won't even begin to be sorry enough. And I called my sponsor, I read him the letter, and he said, rip it up immediately. And I said, why? And he said, because if you don't, you probably are going to reread it. I ripped it up. And then, what would happen? Something would happen. The boys would graduate elementary school or something, and it would erupt again. So I'd have to go a little deeper. I'm resentful at my brother for not talking to his nephews. It affects my self-esteem, pocketbook, ambition, personal relations, and sex. What are the defects in me that if God would remove the resentment would be gone? Well, now ungrateful comes up for the first time. Why do I want to have contact with him? He's very troubled. Do I want my children really talking to this guy? No. I don't want two little boys having to have contact with this very, very troubled man. A big part of my philosophy as a father is screw the grown-ups. They're grown up already. That's why they're called grown-ups. And I need to advocate for my kids. My kids also are very polite. They're real gentlemen. So I'm not saying that they get to not do the right thing, but also, when people would say, come here and let me kiss you to my kids, I would say, do you want to kiss the person you don't know? And they'd invariably go, no. And I'd say, you'll be going elsewhere for a kiss today. And, people get pissed off because they turn kids into objects. So I've had to risk being disliked by grown-ups to advocate for my kids. The result is the conversation I had with my kid in the hospital. That level of intimacy and trust. So a couple of years go by, and it erupts again, and I have to re-examine it, and I get illuminated from another angle, and then finally I get delivered. And the deliverance moment for me was this moment of humility, where something happened. I think Micah graduated college, and again, it comes up. So this isn't the resentment I live in. It's something that erupts. It's like an artesian well of poison, that just every once in a while just gushes. And what it was the defect? The defect, well, I'll tell you what the dialogue was, Scott, what if it is so injurious to him to have contact with you, but I'm a really nice guy. I really am. People like me. What if it is so horrible for him to have contact with you? No, really, there are men who would love to be my brother. Really. You can ask around. It's a known fact. Forget about it. Leaving the wrongdoing of others completely out of the picture. What if it is so awful for him, for whatever reason? Maybe it elicits awful memories of his childhood. Maybe it resonates all sorts of other stuff. What if it is so awful for him to have contact with you that it is a blessing for him to not talk to you? Why would you take that away from him? And then I realized that now I'm 15 years in, I don't even know him. I'm attached to an idea I have about him. I don't even know who the hell he is. By the time he died, I don't know who I was mourning. Have I changed in 20 years? I think so, So then I have to deal with the fact that I've become attached to my idea of this guy. It might have absolutely nothing to do with him. So the thing for me, Bonnie, has been, if I stay diligent, Peggy said on point, if I stay diligent, and that is, if I don't start saying things like, well, I guess I'm just going to be pissed off about this for the rest of my life, then I'm going to find a solution. I had, and I'll just do this briefly, I had my first sponsor who I had for 10 years was just an incredible guy. I had an awful separation from him. So I was left with a miserable feeling I had over and over again during my life. I would have these terrible separations from people. So I would be left thinking, oh, so I guess I didn't love you. Because we hate each other now. So I guess that was all a lie. It couldn't have been true because we loathe one another now. We're talking poorly about one another. All this other stuff is happening. And the answer is no, it's a lie. We did adore one another. I'm allowing this miserable separation to color the fantastic relationship that we had. And I had to all of a sudden become mindful of the quality of separation that I have. My way of separating, I can't leave until the people are dead, the village is burnt, the water is poisoned, have a good day. Then I can leave, you know. And the definition of a good separation is not that everyone's happy about it, but that I've told the truth, that I've acted in an honorable way, and it might be really heartbreaking and really sad, but that I can move on with the business of life. So this resentment against my sponsor, I'm waking up, and I'm waking up in the middle of the night thinking about it, and I can't get rid of it. And when I'm seeing other guys, I can hardly wait to talk about it, you know. What's the weather like? What do you think of my sponsor? You know, kind of thing. It's just insanity, right? And then I had a gigantic thing which I love to talk about, where my sponsor, my new sponsor, said, "Okay, you've done everything except forgive him." And I didn't understand forgiveness. I thought that if I forgave you, that meant I was tacitly saying you were wrong. I didn't understand that what I was doing was forgiving you for a perceived wrong. Just like fancied or real, it has the power to actually kill. And then I was taken to the section on forgiveness in Emmett Fox's Sermon on the Mount, which, if you haven't read, it's a remarkable, powerful document. And it's tough. It's, you know, Jesus had a hand in the Sermon on the Mount. So if it's a tough deal, you know, Emmett Fox starts his book by saying, and I'm going to paraphrase, it's a gorgeous thing. He says, you might think that Jesus was the Son of Man, that he was the Son of God. You might think that he was just a very troubled man who came to a bad end. But no matter what you think of him, you cannot deny one thing. This is a person who has had an unbelievable impact and effect on the world and on the hearts of people. There's no way to refute that very simple fact. And with that in mind, you can now go on and examine some of this material. And in the back of the book, he takes the Lord's Prayer, and sentence by sentence, he writes a chapter on each one. And his chapter on forgiveness is one of the most beautiful expressions of 6 and 7 I've ever read. And I've always thought that if Emmett Fox was Jewish, he would write, if you are saying the prayer and you aren't forgiving someone, you should choke on the words. You shouldn't even be able to get them out of your mouth. So I hope that's helpful, Bon. Dayton.
I'm an alcoholic. My name is Dayton. Scott, can you talk a little bit about this whole concept of enabling the alcoholic, and then also talk about people who jump around with sponsors? I've always had a tough time working with those guys. Like, shortly after they ask me to be their sponsor, I get a sense of buyer's remorse very quickly.
I love the second one so much I forgot the first one already. What was it? Enabling. Dayton was asking about the whole issue of enabling. I have a really specific point of view about it, which I'm going to share, which doesn't work for a lot of people, but I'll tell you what it is. I came home. My wife had been in Al-Anon some years, and she's a really incredible, committed member of Al-Anon for 22 years now. And I came home and I used the word enabled because I had heard it at a meeting. I had no idea what the hell it meant at all. And I said, you know what, honey, this guy asked me to borrow $20, but I don't want to enable him. And she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, I don't know. And she said, if you don't lend him the $20, is he going to stop drinking? I said, no. I said, if you give him the $20, is he going to drink more? I said, no. So she said, so that's, the question is, what do you want to do with your 20? That's the issue. You're a human power. Can't stop the guy from drinking. What do you want to do with your 20? What is the best expression going to be for you? So that's kind of been my thing, you know. I used to sponsor a guy, and he was a really rich guy, many times a millionaire, and a captain of industry in his area. And his company tricked him into going to a rehab in Oregon. And he called his brother, who was a member of AA, and said, look, I don't know. I've heard a tape of a guy named Scott Redmond. I don't know how I'm going to get a hold of this guy, but this guy can do it for me. I mean, if I can get a hold of this guy I'm going to be fine. I don't know how I'm going to, but I'm going to find the guy. And his brother said, you're an idiot. He said, Scott Redmond's been my sponsor for 10 years. You stood next to him at my wedding, and you have the brain of a chicklet, and you're a moron. So he met me, and you know how long I kept him sober for. You know, exactly none. And he was a guy who would call me all the time and say, I got it. Like, and he'd always have a thing that he got sequestered on a privately owned island from one of his friends, and he stayed sober until the minute he got off the island. And he calls me one day and says, I got it. So I go to his house, and he's got, I don't know if there's 500, it's about 500 copies of the original Big Book left. And they're a lot of dough. They cost a lot of dough. And he had gotten one. And he says, I got it. And I took a look at the book, and it's pristine. It doesn't even look like, I said, it doesn't even look like it's been read. He says, I know. I said, so you got the loser book. You got the loser book that's been handed down from loser to loser for 60 years. Mazel tov. You know, it's great. And people would said about him, he's got too much money. You know, and I said, oh, you're right. Let's go down to Skid Row and take all their money away. I just, you know, Dayton, it's just been my experience that I'm a human power. And I know, again, people have a lot of, my question to the person is, are you enabling yourself in the giving that you're doing? The drunk's the drunk, you know. I have sponsored people who have been chronic slippers many times. One of my favorite experiences, we had a guy in our group who was like the kind of guy who, when he shared, people would kill themselves. I mean, it was just interminable. It was like Swami Bhagawinda. You know, this guy was just impossible in these stentorian tones. And he walked up to me after a meeting one day, and he said, you know, you just haven't been there for me. And but you know, but I need to move on. I had no recollection of the guy ever asking me to sponsor him, ever. So I just got the good part, getting fired. And my feeling about it is, whatever you didn't do last time, do it this time. And if you don't do it, I'm probably not going to hang with you. It's probably not going to be. I'm just a human power. I'm just a Jew with a book. I got, you know, and I've said to my wife many times, well, I'll bring a guy over, and she'll go, oh, he's great, and I'll just say, you know, Nan, I'm just taking my turn. Just taking my turn with the guys. So I don't refuse to take guys on like that, because I really firmly believe that this might have been the last drink you ever take. I just know too many people who are chronic slippers for years and years in Alcoholics Anonymous who have long-term successful sobriety and are making a big contribution. But I know that sinking feeling, Dayton, when they ask you. But I judge no man, thank God. So I hope that's helpful. Cookie. And then Pete.
I've been working on something and making people put words to it for me, because you're so good at that.
Thank you.
It has occurred to me that growing spiritually is not a case of adding to. It's a case of eliminating from. I move away from things instead of adding more knowledge, more this, more that, more experience. It's more like taking the things away to cover up God, to cover up the Spirit. That, you know, it's been something I've been thinking about for a long time.
Cookie was asking about how I feel about that spiritual development is based on removing rather than adding. It actually hasn't been my experience. I'll explain why. One of the reasons that I love listening to other spiritual teachers is to increase my practice. A case in point. I started this practice a couple of years ago that I call acting deliberately, which was an addition for me. And I'll explain what I mean by acting deliberately. I'm going to go sit on the couch now. I'm going to go lay down on the couch. And I'm going to watch some football. Now, the way I would normally do that is I'm going to lay on the couch, hopefully undetected for a period of time. And I hope, if I am undetected, that I will be rewarded in kind later on in the day. And I don't feel good about any of this. And I'm scared of being detected. Instead of saying, I'm going to go lay down on the couch and I am going to do absolutely nothing, if I would feel better, I'll give my wife a heads up that there's a person who'll be doing nothing that's over there. And if you have another idea, say it now. But I'm going to deliberately do nothing for a period of time. I'm going to talk to my mother. Now, I can talk. My mother is a very troubled person who ferociously defends her agony and would like very much of it to know that you were joining her. That's not a judgment. That's who she is. Now, I have two choices. I can deliberately get on the phone and say, I'm going to get on the phone with Millie, and this is what we're going to do, and I am going to be loving and kind. I'm also not going to go there. Or I can get on the phone with her and start gathering evidence and wait for her to act like her, which I won't have to wait that long, but and then I'm angry at her for acting like her again. I'm not acting deliberately. I'm not deliberately getting on. So there's stuff like that, like acting deliberately, different practices that I have found. Are they additions? For me, they have been, because they've been new equipment, new tools, and stuff like that. The thing that is definitely a removal is this notion that somehow I'm the architect of it, and that it's a self-defining expression of my own power.
I think one question was, if you find the perfect sponsor, if you find the perfect guest, if you have this perfect practice, if you do all these things right, then you'll be wonderful. Then it won't bother you. Then you'll be okay. And that's what I'm talking about. Not adding more to. Taking some of that stuff away, that belief system. Something out there is going to make me okay.
Sure. I think, the Buddhists say that before enlightenment, I swept the temple and made tea, and after enlightenment, I swept the temple and made tea. And that seems to be the way to do it. And AA, I think, is one of the greatest expression of that. Before I was an old-timer, I set up the meeting and tore it down, and after I was an old-timer, the ones that do it, they have their version. It might not be lifting the chairs, because we get a little older, but they find a way to set up the meeting and tear it down.
Peter, alcoholic.
Hey, Peter.
Can you talk about your 11-step practice a little bit? Kind of what you do in the morning, evening, just what you read, meditation, that type of...
Peter's asking about my 11-step practice. This is it, right? Right. I'm so glad he asked it, because my first 10 years of sobriety, I was really stalled out on the 11th step. I had this prayer that I had put together based on what it seems to ask me to ask for in the 11th step in the Big Book. Father, please direct my thinking today. Show me all through the day what my next step is to be. Give me whatever I might need to overcome such difficulties. Please keep my thoughts especially divorced from selfish, dishonest, and self-seeking motives. Please keep me from self-will and self-pity. Hold me close to you. Reveal your work to me and give me the power to carry it out. Hold me close to you and keep me sober just for today so that I might better do thy will. Thy will be done, not mine. That's a list of things that I distilled from that section. And that was pretty much my experience of the 11th step, that I would seek to have those desires, those wishes fulfilled. And then at around 10 years of sobriety, this thing started flattening out for me. The repetition started driving me mad, and I really felt like I was coming to the deal empty-handed. And I got a new sponsor, and the first thing that he did was he brought me to this Jesuit priest named Anthony DeMello. And DeMello, in his book Sadhana, A Way to God, which is his book about meditation, and it's available on Gopher State tapes and a couple others. There's I think Dicoby has it also. There's a collection called Wake Up to Life by DeMello, and he talks about different exercises and different things we can do to be in the moment, to live in the moment, and to wake up to life. DeMello says that people are born asleep, they live asleep, they get married asleep, they have children asleep, and they die asleep. And that was the thing that was most scary to me, that I'd, lived my whole life in one square block of the Bronx and fold my tent up when it just got too tiring and pack myself in, and DeMello really brought me to a different place, and then this whole notion of, before I was talking about what I wanted to do, that I wanted to have a romantic relationship with my wife, I wanted to write well, I wanted to make a few bucks, and then you basically said to me, if you have to suffer until you get those things, and my mind said, yes, I do. The crazy idea there, the horrible deal there, is that my suffering will purchase the thing that I crave. That's the horrible idea. Great design for living, that I'm just going to stay miserable and grind my teeth down to the bloody gums until this thing happens. After a while, who the hell cares if it happens, really? But the nutty idea is that my suffering will purchase the thing that I crave. And DeMello, Eckhart Tolle, and now Pema Chodron have so reinvigorated, reignited my experience of this light in my chest, this experience of my connectivity to you. Because that's what it is. It's this thing. It's the thing I was talking about before, about the difference between fellowship and friendship. When a guy asks me to sponsor him, I tell him something very difficult. I tell him that if he doesn't call me, he's never going to hear my voice again. That's a very painful thing to do. It's very painful because I might want to call, and I usually don't. I'm really allowing the man to make that decision, to take a step toward a drink or away from a drink. So I can't depend on you. I also tell guys I sponsor, I don't need you to do anything. If I do, you might not do it. Then I'm really in trouble, So to not need you to do anything, to not take any crap and to not give crap, to seek to reignite and reinvigorate this intimate moment of allowing you guys, allowing God, allowing the big picture to enter my heart, and even when I want to drink, allow me to not drink, to interrupt the most profound and intimate experience I've ever had, which is the experience of drinking no matter what. To interrupt that, I've had to go to those places. Otherwise, I would be a member of the Frozen Chosen. I would just be, sober and pissed off and experiencing that thing. So thanks so much for asking that, Peter. And particularly right now, I don't feel like I've got my feet under me just yet. I'm open to a whole new slew of spiritual teachings because of this physical experience that I'm having. And I don't know what's going to present. Sandy's, come to me, my sponsors come to me with a lot of new stuff. And I'm inviting more and more in. And thanks. Thank you, guys.